Welcome to the Leadwell podcast, the podcast where we help you redefine your servant leadership. Y'all, I'm so excited to be with you live today. Today is the last day before my brand new book, Redefine Your Servant Leadership, is published, before it goes live, before it gets shipped out to whomever ordered it. So thank you for joining us here today. We're going to talk about the book. We're going to engage with comments from anybody that posts them in there. And we're going to do a live Leadwell podcast with you on YouTube today. So thank you for joining me. I am so glad you are here. Let's jump into the first question that I always get asked about the book. And it's just, John, how long did it take you to write the book? Which I always reply, well, before I wrote the book, it took me 10 years to live it, to go through really figuring out who I was as a servant leader and how I wanted to be as a servant leader. That process for me took about 10 years. And then getting specifically to how long did it take you to write the book? It took me about a year to write 40,000 words, which were really disorganized. And I was so frustrated, ready to trash it. So I basically put it aside for like 9 months. And then two things happened that really kind of reinvigorated me into writing this book. Number one, I was talking with more and more people about servant leadership, about what it's like to be a servant leader, how they go about living it out practically every single day. What were some of the things that they focused on as servant leaders, and what I continued to find time and time again, talking with people, clients, anybody that would really listen to me, was that everything that I was struggling with 10 years earlier, thinking about, okay, if I'm a servant leader, how do I be kind to people and help them grow, but also focus on performance and results inside of the business? And being able to bring together these things that so often we are told or we think are just opposite. So that, and then I was talking with somebody at the university that I teach at, and she said, you know what? Like, there's so much stigma around being a servant leader that as a high level executive in a global organization, people just build too many preconceived notions when I say that. So I don't really use that term anymore. And that hurt. Like, I felt that, and I feel all of the connection and the trust and the camaraderie with folks that say, I am a servant leader. And so we naturally kind of have an idea about how you operate and the ways that you think and what you care about. And for this person to say all of the negative narratives, the stigmas, the myths that surround it have become so prevalent that they don't want to have other people think about them as a servant leader before because they're boxed in. That made me reinvigorated, ready to finish the book. And then a second thing happened. I'm sitting on a Zoom call with my wife for a marriage kind of class, seminar, if you will. And it was on generosity and stewardship inside of a marriage. And it was with Alan and Catherine Barnhart. And I had no idea what to expect. And so they jump on completely unassuming, extremely humble. Actually, Catherine was on an iPhone and Alan was on a laptop sitting down in their basement. And they just started talking to us. And what I saw were some redefined servant leaders that really focused in on people, on the purpose of their lives and their business, and on performing with quality, with excellence at a very high level. They built a $600 million organization on the servant leader principles. They give away a tremendous amount of their profits. Last year, it was just over $50 million to causes they care about all around the world. And as I looked in there, I saw that they had higher retention, that Alan as a CEO had extremely high approval ratings. And all of these things came back together saying, okay, it's time for us to finish this book. And then so for the last year, almost 9.5 months, it's been a really intentional focus on getting it done, going through all the processes so that tomorrow, this book right here will be shipped to hundreds of people all over the country. I'm so excited for every single one of y'all to get it. So I see that we have some thumbs up, some things. Let's see if there's any comments or anything in the chat. Nope. All right. So I'm just going to go into the next question that everybody asks when we start talking about the book. And it is, what's the process? Like, how do I do this? What do I need to do? Here's what it was for me, and how I kind of went through this process of redefining my own servant leadership and what I outline in the book. First, for me, it was really looking at all of the information, the experiences, the definitions, the stereotypes that were defining me and how I thought I had to show up as a leader. So one of the things that I did was I Googled, and just started looking for different definitions. And I found that just straight up leadership definitions were basically focused on command and control and position, right? Google had it as a leader is one who commands or leads, but same kind of word as leader, right? So commands a group, an organization, a country. Merriam-Webster had it as a leader is someone that holds the position of being in charge, and these things just didn't resonate with me. I had too many examples of people that had no desire to command or control and didn't hold any sort of position who were completely influencing my life and watching them influence the lives of others. And I'd always kind of resonated with lead by example, help others in its basic, simplest form. And so I started Googling servant leadership and I couldn't really find anything. The closest that I got was that a servant leader is one who serves. But that didn't really help me, because it felt extremely circular. Like, anytime somebody says, this is the best movie ever because it's the best movie ever, like you can't determine that it's the best movie by calling it the best movie. And you can't say a servant leader is one who serves. It's just a circular argument. And so then I found that it's a philosophy kind of forwarded by Greenleaf in the 70s, right? Where he talks about really the growth and the well being and the thriving of the people and the community to which you belong. Awesome. And I still needed something just a little more tangible, a little bit more practical. And so I started looking at how we define it, all of the defining moments of my leadership life from, basically being called into being more conflict able instead of conflict avoidant. Going back on advice that I had received from leaders before about, it really is all about integrity and honesty, from my dad's wisdom that said, you don't have to be the loudest one in the room to be the leader. All of these different things for me, I looked at what is defining me and what are some of the outside influences that are defining me and how I lead. And then I started to say, are these true? If they're not true, then what is true? So, for instance, I'm going to open up the book here and just go through something really quick. And it is part of one of those things that I found. So, there's a Forbes article that came out and it said traditional leadership versus servant leadership. And it started to lay out these different leadership styles, right? And in the article, it says traditional leadership approach is where the leader encourages people to do their jobs by providing them with guidance, direction, and motivation. I was like, great, I want to do that. It goes on to say that the main focus of a traditional leader is to improve business position of the company or the organization in the market. So, you know, market share, bottom line, publicity, brand awareness, whatever that might be. Here's what it goes on to say for servant leadership, kind of painting them in these different lights. Servant leadership occurs when the leader's main goal and responsibility is to provide service to their people. And all of that sounds pretty good. Like I still am connected with that. I really wish we could connect guidance, direction, motivation with service to the people. And sneak peek, that's kind of what we do throughout this book. But it goes on to say this about servant leaders. And this is where I realized I was being defined by this as well. And that it's a defining kind of limiting belief for so many. This is what the article says, that a servant leader focuses on the people that are directly below them rather than the company as a whole. And they've disconnected servant leadership from any type of high level leadership, kind of from the strategy, because all of that is about the numbers and servant leaders focus on the people. And I don't know about you, but I don't want it to be an either or. I want it to be a both and. to be the one who serves and leads, to be able to do the direction, the guidance, the motivation, and the service, to be able to improve the organization, the business, in the market, in the bottom line, for something that creates profit, and not just monetary profit, but profit for everybody involved so that they can thrive. One where the mission or the purpose of the organization is advancing, one where the people are well and they are growing through, you know, positive feedback, through challenge, through encouragement, through the support that they need to meet that high standard, and performance for them and for me. I want our performance to continue to go up. I want to be a servant leader that is able to focus on the highest level needs of the organization, our highest level goals, and my highest level contribution. And in this Forbes article and in many other places, that's not what we see painted as how servant leaders get to show up. And so if you are sitting there thinking, who do I want to be as a leader? I kind of like this idea of servant leadership. It's how I answer the common interview question. Tell me about your leadership style. This is a book that is going to coach you through the who and the how to be the servant leader that you want to be able to serve people, the purpose of the organization, kind of that mission that you are on, and focus on performance. We are live on the Leadwell podcast, where we help you redefine your servant leadership to amplify your integrity, your influence as a leader, and the impactful results that you are able to deliver. I want to read you this right here. It is a post, and I have printed it out, which is one of the most awkward things in the digital age. Yes, I am well aware. But I want to read it to you because this really touched me. This was from a friend and a pre-reader of the book. Here's what she said. This is the leadership book that I truly didn't know that I needed. Our friend, me, writes, well of what he knows and what he's learned, so much of it is applicable to leadership in life, in work, in relationships, in any place where you find yourself leading voluntarily and involuntarily. And just I'm touched and moved by this. Here's what she goes on to say. If you are a leader and feel overwhelmed by the pressure to be perfect, the perfect servant leader, complete with all the stereotypes that come with that, this is the book for you. She highly recommends it. It's encouraging, it's challenging, it's engaging, it's thought-provoking. This right here was so kind, and I'm so grateful for her for writing that, for sharing that. And really, it's an outpouring of my journey. It looks at different folks that talk about leadership, Maxwell, Lencioni. I dive deep into Greenleaf and what he actually put forward about servant leadership, which has a lot to do with empathy and listening and healing and community. But it also has to do with boundaries and performance, and saying the goal that we're on as servant leaders is so important that sometimes, for the benefit of the person, to grow the individual that we lead, we actually say things are not good enough and call them up to something better. And Greenleaf lays out both. We go through that. We go through client stories. I outline Alan and Catherine Barnhart, some amazing servant leaders who have amplified their impact, their organization locally and around the world. We go through all of that, as well as a process to help you figure out who and how you want to be as a servant leader. So just checking here if there are any chat questions, anything while we are here live today on the Leadwell podcast. And then I will jump back into some encouragement from the book. All right. Not seeing anything, but do see some thumbs up. See a couple people watching, a couple hearts. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Here's something I want to encourage you all with more than anything about leadership. And it's something that I write pretty early on in the book. So I told you earlier in this podcast that we talked about the definitions of leadership and how it was like command and control, the position, servant leader serves, or it's a philosophy. So for me, as I was going through that redefining process, and I guide you all through as well, I rewrote it after looking at Lencioni, Maxwell, the Bible, looking for ways to really kind of build a leadership definition that was timeless, that was principled, that's practical, that has to do with people. Here's what I got. Servant leadership is the act of influencing the attitudes, thoughts, and behaviors of others toward a shared purpose. And my encouragement, and if you'll stick with me, I'm going to read exactly what I wrote, which is so weird, but let's do it. You do not need a title to lead. You don't need status. It's not something you're born into, and there is no secret handshake, no special position that makes you a leader. You have the opportunity to lead where you are with the people around you to do great things for great causes today. You begin to lead when you act, serve. You earn the opportunity to keep leading when you act in a way that serves others. So, if you're sitting there thinking, I don't know if I'm a leader, I don't know if this is for me, I would tell you that you are. You have influence in the lives of other people. And you get to step into that by influencing their attitudes, their thoughts, their behaviors toward a shared purpose. All right. So, one of the most fun parts about this book to write, outside of kind of going through all of the what defined me, how do we redefine leadership, is actually the myths, all of the myths that we replace. And so, I want to lay out some of the myths. And really, what these do is they they misguide us. I say in the book that they create misguided servants, because they just kind of point us in a direction that isn't ultimately helpful, isn't one where we get to focus as servant leaders on our highest level contribution and on the highest level goals of the group, of the organization, of wherever we are leading. And so here are 10 common myths about servant leadership that create misguided servants. And they are that servant leaders are people pleasers, that they're subservient, kind of putting themselves, their worth, their work below other people or other jobs, a little, pat on the head type of idea. Misguided servants are utopian, not servant leaders, but there's a myth that there's just kind of two rose-colored glasses. There's a myth that servant leaders are nice. Thou shalt be nice, and you must be nice if you're to be considered a servant leader. I know I've had people say that retort to me, just, I didn't, you say you're a servant leader, and that wasn't very nice. Another myth about servant leader is that they are always available. That if you say no, it's some indication that you don't care and not a boundary that you have, or that you're saying no because you're serving another priority yes. Another myth that servant leaders are naive, that they are permissive, that they are passive, that servant leaders avoid power. And we all have individual and leadership power, and it's not to be avoided. It's to be used, to be stewarded, and to be shared responsibly with others. And another myth is that servant leaders have a bleeding heart. And so, like I said, this was one of the most fun sections to write because it's basically lining up. Here's what culture may say, some of the negative narratives. Here's what, at least for me, see on the other side, like, oh, if I'm not nice, it means I'm bossy. And if I'm not always available, then I must be unapproachable. And of course, that's not true. But bleeding heart was a specifically fun one to write because I started looking up, like, what in fact is a bleeding heart? And it's a ventricular rupture. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? It means like your heart is actually bleeding. And then it went on to say that a ventricular rupture usually ends in death. And isn't that the truth? If it is all bleeding heart and there is no boundary, no saying no, no stop to the good and great things that you want to do because you might not have the resources, you might not have the time, you might have already given all that you have, or maybe it's somebody else's to do, or maybe we're in one of those organizations where we just say yes to everybody because we want to do all things for everybody. So we reoriented around servant leaders are servant-hearted, business-minded, and that it is those two things that we get to bring together. And I say in the book that servant leaders essentially have the edge, the leapfrog, because we've already been bringing together serve and lead together. It's always been a both and for us to serve and to lead. And at least for me, it was figuring out a lot more of that lead side than it was that serve side. So again, thank you for joining us on the Leadwell Live podcast, where we are talking Redefine Your Servant Leadership. The reason being, because tomorrow, January 17th, 2024, this book is shipped. It goes to hundreds of people around the country, and I can't wait for you to get your hands on it. It feels so great. I'm a book nerd, and I really wanted a matte, kind of rubbery feel to the book. So I hope when you get it, it's one of those that fits good, that you can open it up and read it. If you go get the book today, so like by midnight, January 16th, then you can still get all the pre-order bonuses. You can get the free ebook, you can get the coaching videos, you can get the workbook. All of it's worth over $75, and you can get it for $9.99 because we have a discounted price going right now. So go out, get your copy of Redefine Your Servant Leadership, jump in, and if you go get it right now and enter that into redefineyourservantleadership.com, we'll actually give you the ebook immediately. So you can start reading right now before this even hits your mailbox. Friends, thank you so much for being here on the Leadwell podcast. We are live on YouTube today talking about the book Redefine Your Servant Leadership. So I want to jump into another thing that kind of misguides us as leaders, as servant leaders, and as individuals. And it's this idea about 1 degree off approaches. I don't know about you, but I feel like every now and then I hear something and it makes a whole lot of sense, but it's just a little bit off. Here's what I found out about 1 degree off on long journeys, which leadership, life, it is a long journey. If we are at JFK and we're about to jump on a plane, and planes always focus on degrees, right? What degrees are they flying at? So if we are at JFK and we're going to fly to Tokyo, we get on that plane, we take off, and we are just 1 degree off course from JFK all the way over to Tokyo, 1 degree off, north or south. We will land in the middle of the ocean, 112 miles away from Tokyo. The longer the journey, the more a 1 degree off approach keeps us from getting to our ultimate destination. And so there was one that really struck me as I was writing the book. I actually saw it online. It was on LinkedIn, and it was this post: humble versus vulnerable leadership. And I was intrigued because both of those seem like great things. Both of those seems like things that I want to be able to do inside of my leadership. Both of them seem to be kind of adding value, serving. And so I start to read through the post. And let me pull it up here. I want to show you the visual so that you can see what I saw, right? And we'll try to get it way up here in front of the camera. So, okay, so this is the post, right? And it's outlining humble versus vulnerable leadership. And it has humble going down one side, vulnerable going down the other. And then it starts outlining all these different things. And I'm like, this is going to be great. I don't quite understand the verses, like that they're competing, but let's figure it out. So first, I was not the only person that saw this. Thousands of people saw this and were totally engaging with it and absolutely loving it. And here's what I started to figure out, that the creator of this post says that humble leaders focus mostly on themselves and their own actions, seeking to demonstrate humility and modesty in their behavior, and that humble leadership actually has an intense focus on self. And I was immediately confused, because that's not my idea of humility. It's not the idea of humility that is proponented by others. A summary of what C.S. Lewis presents is actually that it's not thinking less of ourselves, it's thinking of ourselves less, like less often. And so that being the number one thing, and that this humility is a focus on self, was immediately contradictory. And then it went on to say that humble leaders often prioritize personal attributes such as modesty, humility, and self-effacement, and that this can be detrimental, again, because the focus is on them, and that they may acknowledge their weaknesses, but they tend to project confidence in their abilities. So the acknowledging the weakness while remaining confident was painted as something that was not good, because on the flip side, it says vulnerable leaders openly acknowledge their weaknesses, creating an atmosphere where vulnerability is seen as a strength, which it is. And so as I'm going through these things, I just continued to see and to find that this was 1 degree off. And I don't know if you see it this way, but I know I see it this way, that you often don't get a vulnerable leader unless they are first a humble leader, and that those are not competing attributes. that they're actually self-fulfilling and they fuel one another, where if you are vulnerable, it usually takes an amount of humility to be able to do that. And that being vulnerable is one of the things that actually fuels us being able to be humble, because we are being honest and transparent and sharing maybe some of the mistakes, maybe some of the challenges that we're facing, whatever that might be. So in the book, we go through a bunch of these 1 degree off approaches. There's one earlier in the book that's all about selfless leadership. We talk about a Forbes article, traditional leadership versus servant leadership. We talk about an SHRM article that talks about servant leadership as a people first model for leadership. And in the book, I position it as a mission first approach, that it's mission driven, mission first, people always in decisions and why we're trying to do these great things and who benefits from the results of serving people well and advancing the organization. So we combat all of these one-off approaches and go through them to really just orient us towards what's true, what's right, what's life-giving, and how can we show up as servant leaders in those places. Thank you for joining us on the Leadwell podcast. We are live today talking about Redefine Your Servant Leadership. It's my new book, which comes out tomorrow. And it's so exciting. It's been such an amazing, amazing journey. There have been so many people that have helped with this, from Matthew to Angela to Michelle to Carolyn to EJ to Armin to Carla to my amazing and talented wife, Megan. I just want to say thank you so much to each and every single one of you for being able to just be a part of this. Stephen was an advanced reader of this. There have been so many people that have read this in advance, that have given feedback and that have helped promote this book. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you. Thank you so much. You have made this journey absolutely wonderful. And I'd love to thank my parents and all of the leaders that I've had that have influenced me, friends, coaches, colleagues. You all have just been an amazing support group and encouragement, challenging, and I am grateful for it. I hope that every single one of you can get a group just like I had that is able to do that for you. So what else do we have for our Redefine Your Servant Leadership live podcast with Leadwell today? We have one more story, and then we're going to take it away and you can go grab your book and head on out. So I just want to tell you a little bit more about Alan and Catherine Barnhart, because they are the example of how to amplify this. If you walk through the entire book, looking at how do we define leadership? How do you define leadership? Redefining it, focusing on the 3 main attributes that you need: character, relationships, skills. We got a framework for you that's going to walk you through it. Replacing the myths, a simple growth process to help you transform as a leader. Then the last one is how do we amplify it? And we talk about Alan and Catherine Barnhart. And I just want to shout out some amazing things that they do, give you a little sneak peek here of the book, because I think it looks awesome. Carolyn, Matthew have just beautifully designed this book. Here's how they have amplified servant leadership in their organization and some of the results of it. And I share this with you as an encouragement, as an inspiration, as something that you can go after really intensely and consistently over time, because this is stuff that takes time. So their purpose statement: the purpose of the business, a crane and rigging business, is to glorify God by developing people and encouraging them to use their skills and gifts in His service through constructive work, personal witness, and ministry funding. They've tied in everything that they do right to the purpose of the organization. The mission: that Barnhart Crane and Rigging will continuously improve and grow to be the best in the industry. Their core values, you can see them all listed there. I'm not going to read all of them, but I will read: servant leadership. We serve our people by providing, and just listen to how they've brought all of these things together: purpose, people, performance. By providing purpose, trust, belonging, progress, recognition, and compensation. That they focus on continuous improvement, kind of the elevation, the high standards that require high support. We elevate every aspect of our company in order to improve, and they tie purpose and profit together for everybody involved We work to make profit and invest the profit to reward our teams, grow the company, and meet the needs of people locally and globally. Again, amazing just example and outline here. So here's some of the facts about Barnhart and the proof that this mission-driven, servant-hearted, business-minded, principled approach where things come through the individuals in the organizations and to the people, the places, the causes that we care about. Proof that it works. In 2021, Barnhart Crane and Rigging was a $430 million business, 2021, and they donated $35 million of that year. Not like ever, like in that 1 year, $35 million check or checks to places all around the world. At the time of my research, so writing the book, like in this last year, Barnhart had grown to $600 million organization, and they were prepped to give away $50 million that year. Amazing growth in just a year and a half. Here are some of those retention stats. The median tenure of employees at Barnhart, with a focus on servant leadership, profit for a purpose, 6.2 years. And the average everywhere else is 4.1 and dropping. What's Alan's approval rate as CEO? Someone that focuses tremendously on people, on the purpose to which the business is focused, and to providing quality and constant improvement. Glassdoor has his CEO approval rating at 98%, and the average is 73. So amplified yet again. Watch this, what Alan and Catherine did to just really show where their heart is, why they're doing what they do, and how they approach this business. They've always lived on a modest middle-class income, which is about $150,000, $178,000. CEO's average salary, according to salary.com, $832,000. And instead of deciding to give all this money away themselves, they have invited in employees, team members, spouses. They have a group called the Grove that actually help decide and deliver and support all the ministries that they give money to. And in 2007, the Barnharts gave away 99% of the business to the foundation. They kept 1% voting and operating stock, and then they decided that they were going to go all in. And in 2012, they went all in. They gave their last 1% away. They operated as trustees today, and they show us an example that is unlike anything else for how we can redefine our servant leadership and what might be possible, how we might be able to serve at an even greater depth and achieve even greater results. So what might it look like for you if you go all in on servant leadership, if you redefine it, pick up the book. I hope you do. I hope and know you will change the world. But if this book, like it did for me, will do for you, it will redefine your world. Thank you for being with me here on the Leadwell podcast live, talking all about Redefine Your Servant Leadership. I hope you grab a book. I am so grateful for each and every one of you for all of the support and encouragement via text, via social, via email. It has made this book launch process an absolute joy. I look forward to seeing you all soon. Be well, lead on, and God bless.